On the evening of April 4th, 2026, Lynette Hooker's Apple Watch strapped to her wrist. Weeks later, federal investigators found it inside the cabin of the Soulmate, the boat she never came back to. Not in the water, not on Lynette's body. On the boat, a watch does not unstrap itself. It does not swim back to a sailboat. Yet there it was, dry aboard and waiting. How does a woman go into the water and her watch ends up back on the boat? That question is now sitting inside a federal forensic lab in Quantico. And what analysts pulled off that watch at the chip level, location pings, timestamps, every movement it recorded while it was still on her wrist, may be the detail that closes this case permanently. But here is what makes today different from every other day in this investigation. Right now, as you watch this, CGIS divers are moving through the Sea of Abaco. A cadaver dog named Maggie is walking the shoreline. The dinghy, the 8-foot boat Brian Hooker says Lynette fell from, was seized by federal agents and is now in custody. And Brian Hooker has just been formally linked to tampering with the very evidence investigators have been building this case around. The investigation did not slow down, it accelerated. And the reason it accelerated connects directly to something in Brian Hooker's past that was documented, proven, and already cost him everything once before, years before Lynette ever disappeared. Before we get to what CGIS found, and before we get to what that watch may tell investigators that Brian's story never did, you need to understand one thing about the man at the center of this case. Because what he did at AT&T and what federal investigators are now untangling in the Bahamas is not a coincidence. It is a pattern. And patterns, unlike stories, do not lie. Stay here. If this is the first time you are hearing about the Apple Watch or the AT&T connection, hit subscribe right now on Casebreak Network. Because what federal investigators have built around both of those details is exactly what this video is about. Breaking cases, following every lead. Brian Hooker was an AT&T field technician. His job was straightforward. A work order came in. He drove the company van to the location. The GPS confirmed he was there. The employer reviewed the data. That system worked because the data was reliable. It worked because the employee did not interfere with it. Brian Hooker interfered with it. On April 28, 2026, 24 days after Lynette vanished, investigative journalist Ashley Banfield reported on Drop Dead Serious what her sources told her about Brian's time at AT&T. She did not soften it. He was fired from AT&T for being sneaky, for masking his location, for lying and cheating, and trying to hide where his van was by dickering with his GPS unit. Every verb in that sentence carries weight. Fired, not suspended, not written up. Terminated, sneaky, not a mistake, not a malfunction, a pattern. Dickering, hands on the hardware, physical manipulation. He did not exploit a software gap. He touched the device and made it say something that was not true. For 24 days before Banfield reported that, every outlet covering this case was building a picture of Brian Hooker without the single most relevant fact about him. Reporters had Lynette's social media posts. They had the security guard at Marsh Harbor. They had Brian's recorded phone call describing 3-foot waves, what none of them had. What sat silent inside his employment history at a Fortune 500 company was a documented termination for the same category of behavior now under federal scrutiny. Here is what Brian did in the hours after Lynette disappeared. He arrived at Marsh Harbor Boatyard alone around 4 a.m. Security guard Edward Smith found him and gave him water. Brian told authorities Lynette had fallen from the dinghy near Elbow Cay. He drew maps. He described wave conditions. He named a specific route. He told a friend on a recorded call about 3-foot waves bouncing Lynette off the back of the dinghy. He gave interviews. He went on camera. He said his sole focus was finding his wife, and he did not use the $33 Zero-Z FLIR thermal camera aboard the Soulmate, the system designed specifically to detect a human body in dark water, to search for her, not once. What is strange about this is the consistency, not the grief, the performance. Every statement, every map, every recorded word formed a single coherent account running parallel to whatever his electronic devices were recording. At AT&T, the GPS told the lie by itself. In the Bahamas, Brian had to build a world around the data. That escalation, from passive manipulation to constructed narrative, is the detail that federal investigators did not miss. The first time the trick worked, it cost him a job. The second time, the audience was different. Brian's story sent the search teams in one direction. His GPS data pointed somewhere else entirely. What that gap cost, measured in days and currents, in everything the ocean moves when no one is looking in the right place, is what Chapter 3 is about. But the GPS contradiction is not even the most damaging thing investigators found. There is a piece of physical evidence recovered from his inside the Soulmate that Brian's entire account cannot explain. And it was on Lynette's wrist when she left that boat for the last time. On May 27, 2026, CBS News reporter Nicole Skanga published the report that broke this case open. A U.S. official familiar with the investigation confirmed that GPS data from one of Brian Hooker's electronic devices showed movement that does not align with what he told investigators. NBC News reported the same finding independently. A U.S. official told NBC that Brian's account had caused search teams to look in the wrong area. The Coast Guard confirmed to News Nation it had launched a new search based on the GPS contradiction. 3 outlets, 3 separate confirmations, 1 conclusion. Now look at what Brian's account contained. He drew maps for investigators showing a specific dinghy route out of Hopetown toward the Soulmate. He described 3-foot waves near Elbow Cay. He said Lynette bounced off the back of the dinghy, that the boat keys went into the water with her, that he paddled alone for hours, fired 2 flares that passing boats ignored, and arrived exhausted at Marsh Harbor before dawn. That is a constructed world. Specific enough to direct a Coast Guard search operation. Detailed enough that no one questioned it for weeks. Here are 5 things that world could not explain. 1. Brian's phone navigation app logged GPS coordinates as the dinghy moved across the water that night. Those coordinates do not match the route he drew on the maps he handed investigators. 2. A witness reported hearing a massive splash near the Soulmate around 9:30 that evening. Not near Elbow Cay. Not along the dinghy route Brian described. Near the sailboat itself. 3. The Soulmate carried a $33,000 FLIR thermal infrared camera. It can detect a human body in dark water. Brian Hooker did not activate it on the night his wife disappeared. 4. According to the U.S. official who spoke to NBC News, Brian's account directed search teams to the wrong area of the Sea of Abaco. Every day those teams searched where his story pointed them was a day they were not searching where his device data now leads. In open water, days are not neutral. Currents move, evidence degrades. Time has a cost. 5. Lynette's Apple Watch was on her wrist when she left the Soulmate. Investigators found it inside the cabin. Not in the water. Not on Lynette. On the boat she was never supposed to have returned to. That detail should not matter. But it does, because Lynette Hooker wore that watch the way people wear something they never think about removing. She documented everything: sunsets, sea turtles, cinnamon rolls rising in a solar oven on the open deck. The watch was the one object on her body most likely to know exactly where she went and what happened to her. And it came back to the Soulmate without her. That watch did not fall off. That watch came home. 5 contradictions. 5 things the story could not hold. And federal investigators had access to all of them before the dinghy was ever seized. The FLIR camera was on that boat. It was built to find a human body in dark water. Brian Hooker did not turn it on. Leave 1 word in the comments that describes what that tells you about that night. 5 contradictions in a GPS record that refused to confirm his story. But what investigators found when they stopped reading the story and started reading the devices, that is what changed everything. Because the Soulmate did not just carry one system that night. It carried multiple independent records, each one logging its own version of what happened. And when investigators laid all of them side by side, they did not find a gap in Brian's story. They found a pattern. The same pattern Ashley Banfield found in his employment file. The same pattern that had already been given a name. Lynette posted a photo of the open water 2 weeks before she disappeared. She wrote 3 words underneath it. Living our best life. She meant it. That was not hot performance. That was a woman who had spent years repairing a sailboat alongside her husband and finally believed she was exactly where she was supposed to be. In mid-May, the Coast Guard intercepted the Soulmate approximately 40 miles off the Florida coast, heading west. It was towed to Fort Pierce. Crime scene tape. Evidence bags removed from the vessel. It was later transferred to Fort Lauderdale for processing. The boat Brian and Lynette spent years restoring together, the one they documented on social media under the name the Sailing Hookers, the one they called home, is now a federal evidence vessel. On June 5, 2026, the dinghy was seized. The 8-foot boat, at the center of Brian's entire account, is now in federal custody. The physical object his story was built around is no longer in his possession. It is no longer in his story's control. Ashley Banfield did not call Brian Hooker a liar. She did not call him a suspect. She called him a master of skulking. That word is precise in a way the others are not. A liar commits a single act of dishonesty. A suspect holds a legal designation assigned by investigators. A skulker organizes their entire behavior, not just a statement, not just a single night, around not being where they appear to be. Skulking is quiet. It is the act of operating in the gap between the record and the reality. It is trusting that nobody will look past the data to the person who had access to the device. That is not what Brian did once. That is how Brian moved. Lynette wrote in her journal that the ocean made her feel free. That detail belongs here, not as evidence, not as exhibit, just as a fact about who she was before any of this became a case. No friend has come forward to vouch for Brian Hooker. No neighbor. No member of the sailing community. His AT&T colleagues spotted him in Michigan after he returned and want nothing to do with him. His attorneys issued professional statements, carefully worded, legally appropriate, but no one who knows Brian Hooker personally has put their credibility on the line to defend him. A skulker does not leave allies behind. He leaves data trails. The investigators reading those trails are not fleet managers running compliance checks. They are CGIS agents, FBI forensic analysts at Quantico, digital specialists who recover deleted data at the chip level, metadata, timestamps, location pings, application logs the average user does not know exist. The trick that defeated a corporate dashboard at AT&T was deployed into this environment. And this environment did exactly what it was designed to do. Share this video right now. The AT&T connection, the Apple Watch, the dinghy seizure. Most people following this case have not heard all three of these details laid out in one place. Share it. Case Break Network. Breaking cases. Following every lead. Ashley Banfield called him a master of skulking. Other people called him a liar. Others called him a suspect. Which word do you think fits everything you have just seen? And why does the difference between those three words actually matter? The evidence is in federal hands. The investigation has been reclassified. And somewhere in the Sea of Abaco, divers are still in the water. This case is no longer about what Brian Hooker said. It is about what he left behind. Imagine Lynette Hooker on a Tuesday morning somewhere in the Bahamas, coffee going, the solar oven warming. She is writing a caption for a photo of the water. Something simple, something true. She is about to post it. She's about to tag their location. She is about to keep documenting the life she built, the one she believed in, the one that was finally happening. She never posted it. Her daughter Carly Aylesworth told ABC News this week, she has to be somewhere. So all the help that we could get, it's greatly appreciated. Then Carly said something harder. I don't at this point have much faith that she's out there still alive. Lynette's family has submitted DNA samples to the Coast Guard. When investigators ask a missing person's family for DNA, they are preparing for the possibility that what they recover will need to be identified by genetic comparison rather than by sight. That is where this investigation stands today. The watch Lynette Hooker wore on the last day anyone saw her, the one strapped to her wrist in her final photographs, the one that recorded every movement she made while she was still alive, may be the thing that finally brings justice for Lynette Hooker. Because the analysts at Quantico do not just read what a device displays, they recover what it recorded at the chip level. Every ping, every timestamp, Every location logged while it was still on her wrist. The watch came back to the Soulmate, and the data inside it may tell investigators exactly how. If you were near Hopetown, Elbow Cay, or the Sea of Abaco in early April 2026, contact CGIS through the TIPS app or reach the Royal Bahamas Police Force directly. Your information matters. Lynette wore that watch every single day. Investigators found it on the boat. Drop a comment, not about what you think happened, but about what that one detail makes you feel about who Lynette was. And tell us, when the Quantico results come back, what do you think they are going to show? Subscribe to Case Break Network and hit the notification bell right now. The Quantico forensic results are coming. The dinghy was seized today. When this case breaks, and it will break, you need to be here. Breaking cases, following every lead. Lynette called the ocean her happy place. She documented every beautiful day on it. And the last day she was ever on it, nobody who loves her knows what happened yet.